notice around buildings around town, you will see an owl sitting up on top of that building. Now that owl there is to scare away birds so that they won't land. But most of these birds have never been attacked by an owl, but yet their genetic memory allows them to know that that's a predator. They may have never even seen an owl before in their entire existence, yet somewhere in their DNA, they know to stay away from that owl. And in this very same way, our genetic memory is being used against us. And so all throughout history, we've had this elite group that have passed using their techniques against us to guide us in methods that we didn't even realize were deep inside of us. Now we live in a time where we have crafted glow-in-the-dark pigs through genetic manipulation. We live in a time where we're beginning to clone humans and change life on planet Earth as we know it. Now it may be genetic memory for me, because as it turns out, my father was involved in many of the dark things that I'm going to speak about. Now he himself did not believe in magic. He practiced all the rites and rituals, he did all the things. He was a worshipful master in a Freemasonic lodge. But when I asked him about the magical acts that they would practice, the rites and rituals that they would do, he says, oh, it's a bunch of gobbledygook, stuff I have to memorize, just get through the rituals so that the others could be raised into the degrees. Well, that's my father up there in his full Masonic regalia. I don't know if you guys over there can see that. With the apron. We actually just visited the temple down on 66 Goulburn Street, the Blue Lodge. And they had a sign up there that said, it's confirmed, real men wear aprons. So that's my father's apron there. And as a worshipful master in the lodge, he was then brought upon into many of the secret organizations, because you're not going to be in military intelligence. You're not going to fly into space. You're not going to be in the heights of business without swearing at a Masonic altar. My father was in Project Blue Book, which was the first open investigation into flying saucers. And my father told me, yeah, flying saucers are real. So I had to deal with that. Then he was on Killer One with Jimmy Carter, before Jimmy was president. And so my father and Jimmy were in the first nuclear submarine together. And then by the time I was born, my dad was building nukes. So the genetics and the genetic bloodline of our elite is very critical. And what we have found is that these people, who all seem to be related, all have a very similar game plan and very little empathy or compassion. But you'll notice that George W. Bush is related to Barack Obama, Dick Cheney, Abraham Lincoln, even Tom Hanks. And then as you get this whole story all together, Princess Diana, Marilyn Monroe, and they're all related to Vlad the Impaler, who is known as Count Dracula. Yes. Well, we find that it's not just our elite leaders like President Bush or Dick Cheney or Barack Obama or Hillary Clinton. We find that Hillary Clinton's actually related to Madonna, Celine Dion, and Angelina Jolie, who is now a UN Goodwill Ambassador. But then we got Barack Obama, who's related to Brad Pitt, who's married to Angelina Jolie, right? Joe Biden, our president, vice president in America, related to Britney Spears, right? So you find that all of these bloodlines all tie together, and that there is no outside separation, that these people controlling our very reality, the very mentalities that we exist in, are all related, all from the same genetics. The story gets even weirder, and will continue to get weirder as I talk, I promise. But as we started to realize now, you'll hear Barack Obama chuckling about his cousin Dick Cheney. And he's also related to George W. Bush, and then of course they're all related to the vampire Vlad the Impaler. But did you know, Barbara Bush, through an amazing coincidence, her mother, Pauline Pierce, got into contact with Aleister Crowley, who was known as the Beast 666. And they went off to France, and they did a magical ritual, which, if you're familiar with Crowley's works in the Ordo Templi Orientis, which you have an OTO temple here, and I actually found out that maybe Gillard might be a member back in the past. Aleister Crowley, the older man there, he called himself the Beast 666. He was the lead magician that has crafted most of the magical realms, as Jamie was saying. The 20th century would not be what it is today. Because Aleister Crowley inspired Jimmy Page of Led Zeppelin, David Bowie, God, the list goes on and on, actually. Marilyn Manson, you go back to the Rolling Stones, the Beatles, all of them followers of Aleister Crowley. Well, Barbara Bush's mom, Pauline Pierce, she went off to France with Aleister Crowley to do a ritual, and in the OTO, these rituals are sexual in nature. Now she returned pregnant. Now, no one was really sure, and there was no real claims made that she got pregnant while she was with Aleister Crowley. So they said it was probably her husband's. Well, you have one look at Barbara Bush, and have one look at Aleister Crowley, and I'll tell you who the father is. So this in turn makes George W. Bush the grandson of the beast. Now, I actually predicted W would be forced into office. Now, you will see that they often give their hand signs to alert the others member of the club, to let them know that they're a member of this elite group. Sometimes George gets it wrong. It's not always the smartest man. But you'll see that they all do it. Even the Pope does it. And he wears Prada. Now, there's much I could say about old Pope Ratzinger, but we'll get to him. And of course, Barack Obama. But it actually turns out that we're told this is a sign of Satan. And we're told this is the El Diablo. Some say it means I love you, because it came from hand signs. But actually, when you start to dig into it, you'll find out that this is actually a hand sign of Diana, the goddess. Now, as I started to uncover different secrets hidden inside of in plain sight in front of us all over, I realized that these guys worship goddesses. They have a goddess for each nation. There's Colombia in America, Britannia in Britain, Europa. And all of them tend to go back to Venus. They go back to Athena and Minerva, Isis and Semiramis, all the ancient goddesses. When you start to learn just about Venus, and you start to learn about corporate logos and their occult meanings, you'll find that Venus is coded in most of these. Now, when you look Lucifer up in the dictionary, the first definition you're going to see is Venus. So we're actually talking about a Luciferian brotherhood that encodes their Luciferian symbolism out in front of us. So when you see the shell and the pentagram, these are actually symbols of Venus. Venus makes a 5-pointed star every 8 years when viewed from Earth. And then she's always shown coming up out of the life-giving shell. So this is where your corporate logos start to come into the picture. Which we'll get more. Sorry. All right. What I had noticed, as my father being a worshipful master, I acquired all of the books, all of the secret documents and things of Freemasonry and inner working rituals and such of this, and I began to study them pretty hard. And when you open up the Masonic Bible, immediately they have their list of Masonic presidents. And what you'll find is that over half of them has belonged to one fraternity. Now, am I to believe that we ever elected a president in America? If all of them have belonged to this single fraternity, especially the first 13, you find every single one of them has been a Freemason. Now, I will tell you more about what it is to be a Freemason. But of course, you see George Washington there in his apron. Now, as I said, we just went down to 66 Goulburn and had a look around the lodge here in Sydney, and hey, guess who's all over the walls? Every prime minister you've ever had. You better believe it. These lodges sit around all over the place. I've been to a bunch of them. This one is the one in Los Angeles. It's massive. It's a city block long and half a block wide. They're everywhere, and they're all this big, but no one ever notices. In my little town of Kansas, we have a giant Egyptian temple downtown. And I'll tell people as I'm talking about Freemasonry, well, you know the big Egyptian temple downtown. It has the papyrus columns, big gold compass square and G, says Masonic temple across the top. No, there's no such thing. I've lived here my whole life. No, check it out. They'll walk downtown going, oh my God, why did I never see this thing? Well, you never see it because no one ever goes in it or comes out of it. You never see the people. You never see the brotherhood. You never see them go in. They have underground tunnels. They have ways in. They have